What's up, guys? It's your favorite country boy here, Chris with Hauling Bass TV. I was hoping to be able to bring you a fishing video today, but the fishing's still kind of slow in North Carolina, and it's hard to get a bite, and I just don't want to make you watch a 15-minute video for one or two fish. So I thought I'd make a video anyway and explain my process, or just another beginner tip video. My last video seemed to do well with you guys, so I thought maybe I'd give you another one. And in this video, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 tips, maybe a little less, a little more, but I'm just going to talk about fishing from a kayak. Maybe you're new to it, maybe you only ever done pond fishing and decided now you're going to go get a kayak so you can fish a lake. Actually, that's what I want to talk about, is fishing from a lake on a kayak. And if you're new to fishing a lake, because I keep hearing a lot of people tell me that they don't enjoy fishing a lake because they can't ever catch fish. Well, that's kind of the reason it's called fishing and not catching. But anyway, so I'm going to get right into this video. Number one, I would say, is a good kayak. In my previous video, I talked about buying a kayak for your specific needs, and in this video here, I'm going to talk, like, if you plan on doing any kind of lake fishing or any kind of fishing from a kayak, you're going to want to get one that's pretty comfortable. If you go get a cheap one and it's supposed to be a set on top kayak or a set in kayak, and a couple of hours into your fishing trip you're sore, you're angry, that's not going to help you conquer a lake and being able to catch a fish off of a lake. So you're going to want a kayak that is pretty comfortable to sit in. You're going to be in it for hours and hours. Or if you get a stand on top kayak or a sit on top kayak, and it's not very comfortable to sit in, you're going to want to make sure you can stand up and stretch your legs and stuff like that, because the last thing you want to do is go buy a kayak and then 2 hours into your fishing trip you've not caught a fish, your body's starting to hurt, you're getting, it's easy to get frustrated like that, and it's easy to give up and just say, I'm not going to do this. So I would say the number one tip that I could give you is to you're going to buy a kayak specific for your needs. If you're planning on starting to fishing in a lake, then you're going to want to buy a kayak that's going to be comfortable for you to sit in for hours and hours. My number two tip that I would give you is learn how to break down a lake. Especially if you're like me and you come from a bunch of pond fishing, and that's all you ever did was just pond fished, and then you decided to go to a lake. Well, in a pond, in most of your little farm ponds and just outdoor recreational ponds, you might have 3 stumps in a whole pond, and so it's easy to pattern a fish there because they're going to be looking for a little bit of cover. Well, in a lake, you're subject to have 3 stumps every 10 feet. And so you have to learn how to pattern, have to learn how to throw. All of that stuff takes practice, and it's a learning experience, and you're never gonna know it all. But, so your knowledge in a lake, or your knowledge about the water that you're, maybe you got money for a fish finder, and that can help you out greatly. Maybe you don't have money for a fish finder, and there's a couple of apps out there, and I'm not sponsored by any of these apps, but the 2 that I use the most of is FishBrain and an Angler app. It's ANGLR, and I'll try to leave a link in the description for both of those if you don't have them already. But those can help you tremendously, because usually, like, the FishBrain app usually picks stuff for you to follow that's close by. The anglers are usually close by, within 50-60 miles, I believe. And so that can help you look at a body of water and see that, okay, they're catching them off of this bait, they're catching them off of this bait, and that can give you a good starting point when you go to these lakes to be able to fish them and just, maybe have a little bit of success while you're at this lake. And that leads me into my number 3 reason, or my number 3 tip that I could give you is find you a confidence bait. Now, don't be afraid to throw the bigger profile baits in a lake that you wouldn't normally throw in a pond, because the fish in there are not that size. I'm not saying to not throw that big profile bait that you've never thrown before, that half ounce buzz bait, that 130 whopper plopper, or whatever it may be that you want to throw, because there are bigger fish usually in a lake, and that's normally why people want to start fishing a lake, is because they're tired of catching 1 to 2 pound bass all the time, and they want to go after something bigger. And that's a great way to go be able to do it. Is now, I have seen some I'm sorry, I can't find my words, farm ponds that end up having double digit bass in them, but for the general area there's usually only 1 to 2 in there, because the pond can't sustain a bass, big bass, a lot of big bass, because it takes a lot of food to feed big bass, especially in the summer months down here in the southeast, where it gets hot and their metabolism goes through the roof, and they just want to eat 7 times a day. But it is important to have confidence in a bait that you're throwing. That can give you the best way to catch a fish, because while you're out there, even though you might have researched this body of water, and you might have you've seen the baits that they're throwing and that they're catching on, if you're not confident in that bait, then you're not doing any justice by throwing that bait. But if you're confident in a Senko, or you're confident in a trick worm, it doesn't mean that the fish won't eat it. It doesn't mean that the fish aren't biting that. It doesn't mean that you can't catch fish, period, because you can. If that's your confidence bait, you'll be able to go to a lake, catch 1 to 2 fish, and build up the confidence towards the lake, while building the confidence to something, being able to break down and, okay, I'm going to fish the lake. Now, a lot of fishing is still luck. I mean, you could throw anything you want to at them, but if the fish got lockjaw that day, then you're just not going to catch them, and then that's just what it is. So, it's still, a lot of it is still luck, and you got to present it to them the way that they want it, and you got to give it, make sure that you give them what they want, and make sure that they're, you just got to get lucky and have them bite the hook, or bite the bait, and so you can set the hook. But breaking down a body of water, now that seems to be the biggest factor that can scare people from fishing a lake, is because lakes are huge. They're a huge body of water, and they're used to fishing these 3 to 4 acre little farm ponds that they can fish in 15 to 20 minutes, and they wouldn't, and they can tell real quick whether the fish are biting or not. Well, a lake is huge, but the thing is that you can't look at an entire lake system and say, I'm going to go fish this lake. No. Mainly fishing from a small boat and a kayak, you're going to have to pick an area to fish, because you just don't have the mobility to be able to go from the north end to the south end of the lake in a day's time, especially on a big body of water. But you can still pull up and you can fish even just a section of lake, like a little farm pond. If you find a cove that's holding fish, you can fish it just like a farm pond. You can fish around the bank and catch 1 or 2, and usually that's what it takes, is to catch just 1 or 2 in a lake, and then you're usually hooked. I fished a lake a good 10 to 15 times, and I got skunked every time before I actually caught one. And then that one time I went out there and I caught a little 1.5 pound bass, and it wasn't nothing to write home about, but it just got me hooked on fishing from a lake from then on out, and that's all I've wanted to do since then. And my number 4 tip, and my last tip but not the least, is don't give up. You know, I mean, it's easy when you're fishing from a lake to get overwhelmed. It's easy to say, I can't fish this because there's too much, and you just go into sensory overload. But and it's easy to just, you know, every little thing, you make a bad cast, you backlash a little bit, you know, it gets hot, the sun comes up, you get, you know, and you're like, well, I'm just going home because it's there's no use in trying to fish this. I can't. And that will kill somebody from being able to ever digest, break down, and actually fish and enjoy fishing in a lake. You know, I think that the number one thing I have to tell myself when I'm fishing tournaments, when I'm fishing, or when I'm just plain just out there having fun fishing, is that's what you're doing, is you're fishing and you're having fun. If you know you don't have fun while you're doing it and you get frustrated, you'll give up and you'll never go back to that lake. And who knows, you might have left a 12 or 13 pounder laying that you might have had what that fish wanted to bite on your rod and your confidence bait, and nobody else is throwing to that fish. So those are my tips, guys. I hope this video made sense. I hope this video helped somebody. Maybe you've been fishing from a lake from years and years and years, and this, you know, this doesn't help you at all, but the video helped you. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you can. That greatly helps my channel, and the more subscribers I get, the more video content I can put out for you guys, and hopefully the better video content I can put out for you guys. You know, leave a comment down below on your tips that you would give beginners on just starting out fishing a lake, and what the do's and don'ts of fishing a lake is. I'm sure I haven't covered everything. I only gave you 4 tips, but these are tips that I wish I had known going into fishing a lake, and it probably would have helped me a lot more. This has been Chris from Holland Bass TV. Until the next video, guys, catch one for me. I'm out.